Uh, Good evening, everyone. And yeah, just a minute. I'll just say a couple of words and then we'll put lights off. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming, and thanks to Asha and Arunima for this invitation. I must say I'm deeply honored. It's a privilege. I must also admit I did not know of Mr. Gopinathan Nair, but hearing what just heard and little bit that I read up before coming, and this very interesting account from the islands, and it's almost like we're talking about today. It's not 50 years ago that about talking of opening up the islands for tourism and etc. etc. Of course, the world has changed a lot, but it's so interesting that sometimes the more we change, the more we kind of remain the same. But again, a deep a big thank you for giving me this honor and also this opportunity because I'm really grateful and thankful because for the last 3 4 years I've been working on this project and I'm looking for every opportunity to be able to speak about this. And there have been friends and institutions whom you have requested to, I want to come and speak, and institutions in Delhi say no, we can't allow you to speak, kind of, and institutions that are working in the fields that we would all consider important in relevant fields. So when an invitation comes, then it's a very pleasant surprise. So I didn't, of course, know Asha at all, and one day there was this kind of random call, or was it a WhatsApp message, and there was this lady asking me to come to speak to. So of course my ego was going through the roof and I was wondering what is this, and I tried to find out and I had no idea. Then we had a chat and then she told me about her father and it was a centenary celebration. And I was of course quite delighted to be invited to speak about this because I've been wanting to, but I also eventually realized that it's a great honor. So thank you so much again. Thank you all for coming. And I will now move on to speaking about what I came here for. And if we can have the lights off. The gentleman has gone out, I think. So, what I'll do in the next 35 40 minutes is run you through the details and the story of this project, this Great Nicobar massive project that's coming up. So, this basically, if I might put it this way, is going to be a deconstruction of what this project is from multiple angles, and also to kind of justify why we are calling it a betrayal, because this is a question that it's a strong term to use. And even I must also thank Frontline and the current editor Vaishna Roy, who has been publishing quite regularly and carrying stories on the issue. Just the last issue of Frontline magazine, if some of you have seen, is another in 2 years a second cover package on that particular project, and there are fantastic stories in that particular issue. I would urge all to pick it up. There's one story by ecologists from the Nature Conservation Foundation, T.R. Shankaraman and Rohan Arthur, who write beautifully about this whole idea of compensatory afforestation or the relocation and transplantation of corals. It is as philosophically beautiful as it's a scientifically rigorous article. It's a beautiful piece of writing. So there is a gratitude that I have to Frontline and Vaishna for having agreed to do this book. And when we were doing it first time, she said she herself had a lot of trouble in convincing her team to call it the betrayal because it's a strong word. But I had to put my foot down and I said, no, we will carry this as that, and then she agreed. So it's a slim book. It's only 100 odd pages. It's basically cobbled together a bunch of 11 or 12 stories from across journals and across newspaper publications and magazines on a different set of themes. So it's actually easy reading, but it puts together the key concerns that we had. So also in this picture on the right hand side, you will see that lighthouse. And I know that's a very important marker. This is the lighthouse of Indira Point, the southernmost tip of political India. And there's a reason why it stands in water. And I will come to that a little detail. It's a very important marker of what has happened and the fact that we have kind of forgotten about it. So yeah, can we have the next one, please? So this is the island of Great Nicobar on the left hand side in the image, and this is one of the largest islands in the entire Andaman and Nicobar group. It's roughly 900 and odd square kilometers, which is quite large for an island chain, which itself is about 8,000 square kilometers. So more than 10% of the landmass of these islands, which go down in this arc from the north, Burma to Indonesia in the south, is this island. Now, what's very important about this island also is that even today, it's one of the largest land masses which remains pretty much undisturbed from outside intervention. So 910 odd square kilometers, The total population, human population here is only 5,000 people, of which about 800 or 900 are the indigenous communities, some of which we saw pictures in Mr. Nair's presentation and the one that Asha presented, the Shompen community. They live as a very, they're not aggressive like the Jarawas and the Sentinelese historically in that sense, but they live very remote lives. Not much is known about them. Some of their bands are in contact with the outside world, some of them are probably not. So it is a world that is not really very well known. You have, except for a small patch on the right hand side of the map, which is the eastern coast, where settlements came up in the late 60s and 70s, when settler families were taken from mainland India and settled there, which itself is a very interesting history, not always something that we might agree with, but a very interesting history. So this island is where this huge, massive project is coming up. It started off with 72,000 crores. Now it is 81,000 crores. Within 2 years, the costs have gone up. It's a $10 billion. That's roughly the estimate. In 4 parts. The next one, please. So these are the 4 components. One is a transshipment port in Galathea Bay, which is, I'll come to that. It's a very important, very interesting place. There is a massive, there's an airport. I think that's number 2. Number 3 is a massive kind of land project, 130 square kilometers of pristine tropical evergreen rainforest, where government estimates, which are certainly underestimate, is, 1 million trees are going to be cut. And Arunima mentioned about this climate crisis that we are part of, and in a moment today, to actively and deliberately say that we cut down so many trees for a development project is really kind of hitting the axe on our own feet, but we'll come to that. And then there is this power plant. So this is this massive 4-component project that is coming up, where it was initiated in 2021. You see on the right hand side a project proposal report by something called ACOM India Private Limited, which is a Gurgaon based company. And they put together this massive project. And I think I have slides here, but just in 2016, as part of another report that they put together with McKinsey for port development in the country, they very explicitly say, and I've also mentioned it in my recent article in Frontline, that Great Nicobar is a very bad idea for a transshipment port. And just 3 or 4 years later, they come up with this massive kind of project. What's also important to keep in mind is that a development of this kind, infrastructure of this kind, is not a new idea for Great Nicobar. Right? For the last 30, 40 years, this has been in discussion, because there are certain, the locational advantage, the fact that there are no people there. So these have always been looked at as possibilities of doing something. So it's not new, and we must acknowledge that. From different political establishments, prime ministers have looked at it differently, but certainly nothing compares to the scale of what is being proposed today. So this is probably one of the biggest single infrastructure projects proposed anywhere, leave alone the islands, even in this country. $10 billion of investment in one place. Now you can imagine what the scale of the whole thing might be. Next one, please. So yeah, this not required, but here the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, just to give you a sense of the geography, far away from mainland India, as we all of course know, and it's in some senses an accident of history, and it's an opportunity for us, but also a big challenge for the nation, because it is so different, it is so unique, that we can really mess it up, or we can do a very good job. Next one. This is Great Nicobar, and this is the picture before tsunami, and this is the southernmost general store of India. So, sabse dakshin ka kirana ka dukan. It got washed away when the tsunami happened, but I just thought I'll put that picture up because some Indians do have a sense of geography and history still. It's not like we've all lost it. But the very interesting is that this was actually a shop put up by Sardarjis there. So that's a completely different story that has not been really documented or told. There's a bunch of ex-servicemen family who were settled in Great Nicobar in the late 60s. And perhaps when your father went, maybe it's about, yes, exactly. So it's those are very early days of this settlement in Great Nicobar. So nothing much would have happened in very early days. So that might be a very interesting and important record, particularly in the context of the settlement. Why they are there, how they are there, it's also context of the geopolitics of the place. But I just thought I'd show you this picture because I just thought it was, if I'd known, I would have taken a better picture, but I didn't get a good picture that time. Next one, please. And this is This is absolutely fantastic forest. I'm not a biologist or a botanist by any means. I'm not even trained as that. I have some interest, but it is spectacular by beyond words. So these are tree fern forests in the Great Nicobar Biosphere Reserve. Almost uh, 80% of that island is a biosphere reserve. There are 2 national parks. There used to be 2 wildlife sanctuaries, and these are just boundaries on the map. The entire island is richer than anything that we actually have. It's a tribal reserve, it is reserve forest, and in a sense, a very small strip of land actually is not under protection in historical context. And one would argue we just let it be because the uniqueness, the singularity, the richness of this place is not something that we can ever imagine, leave alone recreate. So, why go ahead and destroy it? So, you have just some samples I'll kind of talk to you about. Next one. These are the same tree fern forests. So, just looking up in the canopy, these are tree ferns that grow up to 25, 30 feet. And when I showed this picture first, somebody said, oh, these are like a spider's web dangling in the sky or waves created by a drop in the sky or something. But absolutely spectacularly beautiful. And large, and we have experts here, they will probably tell us more about these forests, but they're not very common. They are rather unique and rather special in that sense. And this is just one sample of what the richness of the place is. Next. This is the forest floor. Again, I don't know the scientific name, but the richness of the complexity of an ecosystem, or you can see everything in this place. Really an evolutionary lab, as it were. Next one. And then, of course, there is the bird called the Nicobari megapode. Just one example of what we might call charismatic megafauna or charismatic fauna for an island system. It's a very, very unique bird. As the name suggests, it's found only in the Nicobar Islands, nowhere else on planet Earth. It's an endemic. Even in the Nicobar, if I'm not mistaken, it's maybe on 3 or 4 islands it's found, and that's all. There are perhaps not more than 2 or 3 detailed studies of the Nicobari megapode. There are probably only 2 scientists, I think, who have done detailed studies. One, Sunil was mentioning, we were discussing, was Ravi Sankaran, who many of you might know, was a good friend. He was the first guy who really studied the Nicobar megapode. It's a very unique bird. It does not incubate eggs like birds normally do. They put together a mound of earth. So that little line of brown that you're standing on is a mound of earth on the coastal forests of the Nicobars. And inside that mound of earth is where the bird lays its eggs. And they don't incubate it. So perhaps they are a link between reptiles and avian fauna, having made that evolutionary shift, because reptiles will leave their eggs to be incubated by the heat of environment and not the body heat. They are also known as thermometer birds because they have some sense with big feet or beak or whatever. And maybe I'm not right in the ecology there, but very unique bird. And that patch of land that I showed you where the project is coming up is the only patch of land where the bird, any scientific studies have been done on the bird by Ravi and Shivakumar, one of his students who was at SACON and now is in Pondicherry University. There might be 1 or 2 other small studies. So that's the only part where the bird has been studied. They exist in other parts, but the knowledge we know of the bird, that site will go completely. And it is also one of the important habitats of the bird itself, because low-lying coastal forests is a dominant habitat for this bird, and this is exactly where the project is coming up. Next one. And then, of course, there is the giant leatherback turtle. 4 of the 7 species of sea turtles that we have on planet Earth nest in the Andaman and Nicobar beaches, and also on the beaches of Great Nicobar Island. And among them, for various reasons, different turtles, of course, are spectacular for their own reasons, but the giant leatherback is a real giant. It's the largest of the 7 species. It's perhaps the deepest diving. It's also been around since the time of the dinosaurs. It's a very, very long migrant. And Galathea Bay, where the port is going to come up, is perhaps the biggest and the most important nesting site of the giant leatherback in the entire northern Indian Ocean. 500 nestings on an average are recorded in that particular beach every year, which is very, very high for a giant leatherback. And from all records that we have, there isn't a bigger nesting site in the entire northern Indian Ocean. So if the port comes up, and I will show you in what mechanism the port has been proposed, and when we talk about betrayal, it's much more than a betrayal in the context of what these species are and what these places offer to us. Next one. Yeah, this of course is, depending on how you look at it, somebody has emerged from the sea or returned to the sea. But this is the track of the giant leatherback, which interestingly in many local languages I found out is in Nicobar, the local people, combination of local people call it the tractor kachua, because the tracks really are that of a, like a tractor. And I was reading somewhere, I forget where, in other local languages in other parts of the world, the local term is the tractor is used. So there's a common understanding of how it's really huge. I mean, it's a, and it's a real joy and a privilege to be able to experience these creatures, to see them. Uh, Creatures we know very little about, who've been around for so long, and who live lives that are absolutely something that we won't understand. Next one. So the issues of, so this is just to give you a little bit of a context of what this place is, and this really is not even this, the skin of the surface. There are hundreds of endemic species of plants, of reptiles, of avifauna you find in these islands. Again, the latest issue of Frontline has a profile of 10 important species, rare species that are found in Great Nicobar. They were nicely written short accounts, and maybe you should have a look at it. So there is so much. There is the ecological concern. There is a very crucial geological concern, which one does not really understand why is being ignored. There are the indigenous people I'll talk to you about. There's the economic, there is the legal, and the due process. So on every axis that you will look, there is a problem. And one more serious than the other. So let's go and look forward as to what it is. Next one, please. So this is, this is Galathea Bay. You see an initial early plan of the port that was going to come up. The berths are there. Now this is roughly a 13 square kilometer bay. And on the left hand side, so you see on the top that little patch of blue, that is the river Galathea that enters into the ocean there. It is the biggest river on this island, probably in the entire chain, and very small by mainland standards. But this creates the perfect habitat with the silt and sand and the water flow that will allow this huge creature, the giant leatherback, which can grow up to 6 feet in length, 500-600 kilograms in weight. So it's a very large animal. So they require specific conditions which presumably get created here because of the nature of the specific ecosystem. Now in 1997, Galathea Bay was declared a wildlife sanctuary precisely because the turtles come and nest here. Giant leatherback, of course, is important here, but there are other species. Just beyond this river mouth are the forests where the Nicobari megapode is found. Crocodiles are found in very good numbers. There are the Nicobar shrew is found here in good numbers. So this was declared a wildlife sanctuary in 1997. Now, this is where the port is going to come up. And if you look at the design of the port, you see the berths and you will see the breakwaters. So currently the opening of the bay mouth is about 3 kilometers wide. So imagine you're a giant leatherback female who has to nest. She has a 3 kilometer opening to negotiate the bay and then find her thing. Now when you're going to build a port, you're going to of course have to block that entrance because to make for stable shipping. And you can see in those two breakwaters, an opening of this bay which is 3 kilometers will now be reduced to 300 meters. So is there any chance that any turtle, any creature will be able to negotiate this little opening now and then reach the nesting beach? And also let's keep in mind that if the shipping starts, there's the ships coming in and out, there's sound, there's light, there's oil pollution. So we don't know what is going to happen. And tragically, India's leading institutions have said this is okay. And I'll give you the evidence of that next one, which is why this thing of betrayal keeps coming again and again. But before I go there, the other very interesting thing about the giant leatherbacks that come to the Andaman and Nicobar Islands and to Galathea Bay, this is based on satellite studies done by the IISC, Andaman and Nicobar Forest Department, and the Andaman Nicobar Environment Team. They tagged 4 giant leatherbacks that nest in the Andaman and Nicobar waters, not exactly Galathea, but in another beach. And they found that these turtles, after nesting in the Andaman and Nicobar, swim 12,000 kilometers to the coast of Africa on the one side, and the other individuals swim 10,000 kilometers to the coast of Australia on the other side. So you can it just blows my mind that look at how they connect. What is going on in this planet? So we talk about connections and we talk about human beings traveling and stuff like that, but what journeys these creatures are this thing, and we know so little. So if satellite tagging of 4 turtles could tell us so much, then we don't know what's going to happen. We were actually in touch with an Indonesian researcher who said leatherback with a tag on a flipper, not a satellite tag, but a ring tag, they found her that female nesting on an Indonesian beach. So these are very deep connections. And this is precisely the place that we will destroy. So these connections that are being made and have been made for millennia will be just gone because this port will come up. Next one. And how is the port going to go out? So in January of January 19th, 2021, the Ministry of Environment and Forests released this National Marine Turtle Action Plan. All right, next. Now this, you can see in the circle, Galathea Bay has been listed. Now this is 19th of January. This is a release, formal release signed by the then Environment Minister. Galathea Bay has been acknowledged as an important marine habitat. It is still presumably a wildlife sanctuary because 1997 it was proposed as a wildlife sanctuary. So one would assume that we really are concerned, because if you've listed it as an important marine habitat, and we know we have evidence of the giant leatherback, because the giant leatherback does not nest on the beaches of mainland India. The last record from my memory is actually from the coast of Kerala in the 1950s. After that it has not nested, not recorded nesting on the mainland beaches. It's only in the Andaman and Nicobar. Perhaps Lakshadweep too, but I'm not too sure. Sri Lanka, yes, of course, but I'm saying in the Indian context. So you have 19th of January, you have listed this as an important marine nesting habitat. Next one. But 2 weeks earlier, just 2 weeks earlier, in a meeting of the National Board for Wildlife, under the watch of the same minister, this wildlife sanctuary has been denotified, with the explicit language in the minutes of the meeting saying that we have to construct a port over there. So it's not even an ecological reason. So on the one hand, we are saying this is an important habitat, and just before that we have said actually we will denotify this because not because the turtles are not coming anymore, but because if we don't do that, obviously because the wildlife sanctuary would have been a hurdle for the permission to grant to the port. Now, if we go back and look at this being one of the most important nesting sites of one of these most unique creatures, perhaps the only site in India that has that kind of nesting density, and in the context, then why would we do that? On the one hand, we're talking of biodiversity conservation. We are at the same time talking in global fora of our commitment. And here you have the most obvious, it's not like, I don't know what to say. It's the most obvious thing to not do. But here we have the sanctuary is gone. The port is going to come up here. Next one. And these are the minutes of the meeting in which the director of the Wildlife Institute of India actually says it's okay. You can go ahead, and this is the meeting in which they denotified, and he says, oh, we will ensure that the turtles continue to nest or something of that kind. So you're going to block the entry of the bay by 90% from 3 kilometers to 300 meters. And you still say that it's okay. You sign off on that, and there it's gone. And it's even more hilarious or even more tragic. Next one. When friends filed an RTI, this was in March. In June, we filed an RTI. The WII actually said, we have no experience or expertise of ever having worked in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands on the giant leatherback turtle. So an agency that has never worked on that species in those islands, has no expertise on that particular species, gets the right to do this. So what is this if it's not a betrayal? And it is just so tragic, and it goes on. I'll come to the different part of the story a little later. Next one, please. So I'm coming now to another dimension of the tribal people there. We have this small community called the Shompen, 250 odd people, with a culture that's very different, very unique. We know very little about them. And there's another community known as the Nicobaris. So that's about 500, 600 people who initially gave permission to the project, and then they wrote a letter to the concerned authorities withdrawing their no objection certificate, because they were very badly affected when the tsunami hit. Because the Shompen are forest dwelling communities, the Nicobaris are coastal communities. So their settlements were washed away, and there's a reason why that happened, and we'll come to the geological dimension of that. Hundreds of their people died. So 20 years ago, they were brought from their settlements and put in Campbell Bay, which is the administrative headquarters of this island. They're living in a shanty town, with always being given the promise and the hope that they will they will be allowed to go back. They want to go back because life for them, and there are records and accounts, and even in our articles, colleagues like Manish and Ajay Saini and all have written that life is not what it used to be, and you can imagine. They've been wanting to go back, and they've been promised that they will go back. But 20 years hence, that promise is still not being fulfilled. And when they got to know of the project and they gave their permission or whatever, they didn't realize in some senses that's what they say. And they say in their letter that we were actually not told the full truth, because they realized suddenly that if the project comes up, there are certain parts of their lands that will become inaccessible forever. So there are parts of their land where they want to go back. They suddenly found out that the project is also coming up exactly over there. So they have written this no objection certificate. But I will just give you two examples of the case of the fence eating up the crop. So this is a 2020 letter, I think, from the Tribal Welfare Department, which is entrusted by our law and by all of us to protect the tribal community. And here they have written a letter to the project proponent, an agency called ANIDCO, which is the Andaman and Nicobar Islands Development Corporation, to say that we will make land available from the tribal reserve if you want it for making of the project. So that agency, for a community that has very little communication with the outside world, that agency that has been given the power and the authority and the responsibility to protect or to look after the needs of the most vulnerable sections of our society. And the Shompen is a PVTG. It's a particularly vulnerable tribal group. The same agency is offering to say that we will help you in the denotification of the tribal reserve, and we will give you the land of the tribal people for this particular project. And ANIDCO, by the way, it's a fascinating story at multiple levels. ANIDCO is a small quasi-government organization based in Port Blair, whose annual turnover since it began is 300 crores. The annual profit is 50 crores on an average. They are going to be the project implementer for an 80,000 crore infrastructure project, when all they have done for the last 30 years, you won't believe it, have run tourism resorts, have sold milk, have sold petroleum, and have sold liquor. That's all they do. They were made for that. Of course, they are a front of sorts, but what is the basis on which we can trust an agency like this to now execute a project of a scale, magnitude, and complexity that has not been done ever actually? So it's just a complete. Again, I lose words what to say. It's just complete betrayal, of course, because there's no justification for that kind of thing. Next one, please. Now this is also coming to a far more substantial matter. Go to the next one, please. So there are 3 dates. This is actually from a recent petition that's been filed in the Calcutta High Court on the matter of the tribal community. So you see 2017, I think. This is to do with the FRA. 2007, then is the date of 2022, and then there is again 2022. So I'm gathering most of you are aware of the Forest Rights Act and those things. So 2007, the Forest Rights Act was notified. For 14 years, the administration, in the Andaman Islands, in the Nicobar Islands, that this becomes very important, because we have, there would be habitat rights for these communities that kind of fall outside the governance system of this country. There are no panchayats where you can, in the conventional sense. So they have their own systems of governance. And in the Nicobar, for instance, in Great Nicobar, for instance, 700-800 square kilometers of forest, which are tribal reserve, 800 square kilometers of forest are tribal reserve for the Shompen and for the Nicobaris. So this should be an even double protection, a double layer of protection even within the Forest Rights Act. So but the administration never did anything about it. And they kept saying, oh, there's no problem, we don't need to do a settlement of rights, what is the problem, they have a tribal reserve. So they never thought it was important, till they suddenly realized that they have to do some process under the FRA to take away this tribal land from these people for this particular project. Go next one, please. So, from the time that the Forest Rights Act was notified to the creation of the first basic institutional framework to deal with the settlement of rights, it took them 14 years. So there's something called the subdivisional level committee, which is the lowest committee that looks into the matter. So that has to be constituted, and that can give you permission to say that, okay, you can do you can take this land away for whatever you want to do. So 14 years, they did not feel the need to do that. Suddenly in 2022, because somebody must have pointed out, you need to settle the rights under the Forest Rights Act, they created this committee. Next one. And in 22 days, the matter was settled. So if anybody stands up and says that Indian system is not efficient, no, I'm sorry, this is one of the most efficient systems when it wants to be. This is one of the most complex things that you can actually do. It's the most complex settlement of rights because you do not even have the language to communicate with the tribal community. And here, the details are there. The committee has members who should not be on the committee. It says there have to be 2 members of the tribal community. There is none. So how the system comes together to say that, okay, Wildlife Institute of India can denotify the thing. Now within this, and we are so efficient within 22 days. So they've called a panchayat meeting of a panchayat which is not even part of the tribal community. And somebody else is giving a permission on their behalf. So we have the paper now and it has been given. Fortunately, now it's been taken to court and we'll see what happens. So there is some hope there, but I'm just pointing to you, there are a lot of opportunities for us also to raise these questions. I mean, that's also one of the reasons why I'm pointing this out. As researchers, journalists, policymakers, on the environmental axis, on the ecological aspect, on the tribal rights, there's much to be done both in terms of engagement, research, writing. Even a lot more research would be very good, and why we will, many aspects of that I will kind of point to you as to what can be done. But I just put together this slide for today's presentation because this is very, very new, and I was also trying to see how to communicate the bizarreness of this whole thing. For 14 years you didn't think it was important, and then within 22 days you complete an entire process, which is not an easy process to do in any case in the first place. Next one. And the bizarreness of this whole thing is that the initial plan is to bring 6 lakh people from outside into Great Nicobar Island as part of this project. The total population of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands is 4 lakh people, 5 lakh people. So what you have had in these 600 islands over 200 years of settlement, going back to the British, like Asha mentioned earlier, we only managed to have 4 to 5 lakh people. Now, what idea can it be to bring in 6 lakh people to this particular island? How is it sensible in any kind of way? And what shows the lack of planning or thinking is, this is a very initial draft of the proposal. When we raised some questions and we wrote in, they said, okay, it won't be 6.5, it will be 3.5 lakhs. So you make it 50%, but 3.5 is a very, very large number. And even if we look at the implication for the local people, the local tribal. Today, Great Nicobar has 5,000 people, of which 1,000 people are tribals. Within 15 years, it will still be 1,000 tribal people, there will be 300,000 outsiders. It's a ratio that will go from 1 to 2 to 1 to 8,000 people. So for one tribal person, there will be 8,000 outsiders. So what hope is there for these communities to survive in any way? Land, water, resources, culture, everything will go. Just the sheer number of people there means that everything is going to get destroyed. And then there is next one actually, they say, we will put barbed wires and separate the settlers and because somebody said, oh, what will happen, the settlers will infringe, so they will put barbed wires. So the level of thinking, the level of lack of understanding, the apathy is so deep. Now they're talking some geofencing because nowadays everything is AI or something. Or how can you do that? I mean, how can you stop these people if you bring them? We don't know who will come, what they will do. So it's a complete invitation to disaster. Next one. I come to one very interesting aspect is the geological dimension. So what's very important to keep in mind is that the Andaman and Nicobar Islands stand on what is known as the Ring of Fire. This arc around the Pacific, which has the maximum number or probably the most important site of earthquakes, origins of tsunamis, volcanoes are all around the Ring of Fire. So we are there. So the Andaman and Nicobar Islands has earthquakes once a week on an average. It's only 100, so Great Nicobar is only about 100 kilometers from Banda Aceh, the epicenter of the earthquake of December 2004, 9.3 on the Richter scale. And just 2 months back, I was reading a Nature Reviews updated article which says, after that, there have been about 6,000 aftershocks in those Andaman and Nicobar waters, and earthquakes of about 8 on the Richter scale. So it's a phenomenally volatile geological landscape. Next one. This is very recent. There's these clusters of earthquakes that happen there. Next one. Now, this is actually a very interesting set of maps. This is, if you look at the map on the left, it is 21st of December 2004, if the dates are visible, the satellite images. And on the maps on the right are 26th of December 2004. So one image is the pre-tsunami and earthquake, and the image on the right for both the islands, on the top is Kachal, on the bottom is Trinket, is a post-earthquake and post-tsunami picture. So we remember 2004 for the tsunami, and on the mainland, of course, that was the impact. But in the islands, it was the earthquake that caused a much larger change and impact than the tsunami. Because what happened, and the image on the left-hand side, the map on the left-hand side, this was actually from an article I did for Frontline in 2005, based on work by a bunch of geologists in the University of Colorado. What happened, if you look at my hand, Andaman in the north, Nicobar in the south, with Port Blair roughly as a pivot, like a child seesaw tilts in a playground, the Andaman Islands that morning came up by about 5 feet. And the Nicobar Islands and Great Nicobar saw permanent subsidence of 15 feet that morning. So you had this complete tilt. So you see this on the top left in the map, you will see +1 meters, which is the Interview Island, and extreme south where Great Nicobar is. Yeah, thanks, Urvi. Yeah, there. At the bottom, there's a number in red, extreme bottom. It shows about -4 meters. That's the subsidence that took place. And what you see on the map on the right-hand side is the land, the red in the yellow circle, is land above the high tide line before the earthquake, and on the right-hand side, that land is now submerged underwater. So this is the kind of change that took place. Next one. Now, this is a 2019 report by WAPCOS that talks about constructing the port in this particular place. And this is a traffic study for transshipment port at South Bay, which is another name for Galathea. Next one, please. Now, look at the pictures on the left. The picture on the top left is the one that is the picture of the lighthouse of Indira Point today. It stands surrounded by the waters of the Andaman Sea because of the subsidence that took place. The picture on the bottom is a picture of the same lighthouse before 2004. Now, this is the shift that has taken place in this particular landscape. Imagine that, I mean, can we imagine what it means? It's incredible, the change that has taken place. And I'll just read to you in blue. It says, this is actually a report from IIT Kanpur in 2005. And they say that the lighthouse at Indira Point, the southernmost tip of Great Nicobar Island, which was on high ground before the earthquake, is now underwater, indicating a land subsidence of 3 to 4 meters. So that is good scientific Indian accepted evidence. In 2019, the WAPCOS report, which is proposing a port over here, says in blue, the topography of the island is best suited, which was not damaged even by the tsunami of 2002. And they even got the date wrong. 26th of November. But is this not a damaged landscape? So what does it mean? And to what level are our institutions collapsing to be able to argue for something of this kind? Are we not inviting disaster in terms of loss of forget ecology, forget tribal people, that 40,000 crores or 300,000 people you'll bring, what will happen to them if there's another earthquake, another tsunami? Because it will come. There's no doubt about that. This is a landscape that is experiencing these things all the time. So it's real tragedy that we are ignoring such obvious scientific evidence, leave alone anything that's more complex about rights and about anything of that kind. Next one. Yeah, this is what I was saying. This is evidence of the same AECOM saying in 2016 that it's not a good idea to build a port over here because it's not going to work. And now actually going ahead and saying that yes, it's okay and it's a fantastic investment and things like that. So nothing changed really, but actually, or maybe everything changed. Similarly, next one. This actually is, I've written about this in the latest issue in Frontline. This is actually the editor of and the director in 2018 of the Bombay Natural History Society, writing in an editorial in the Hornbill magazine, which is the magazine of the society members, and saying that this project is an absolute disaster. He's saying very, very explicitly. But ironically, he then becomes the member of the expert appraisal committee in the ministry and grants or guides a process of environmental clearance in which a project of this scale is granted environmental clearance in 17 months. The proposal was written in March of 2021, and environmental clearance was granted in November of 2022. Whatever the period is, a very, very small period. I'm getting the numbers wrong, but yeah, that's right, 18 months between March of 21 and November of 2022. So nothing could have changed. And if you look at the text of what he writes in that, it's like, oh, this is such a beautiful place and this project is such a disaster. So, it's really, really sad that people who could have held up and institutions that could have helped up have actually not really. Next one. This is the Environment Impact Assessment Report, which we all know, and most of us here know what a sham it can be. But I just want to point out to how pathetic and how unfortunate it is. Just the quality, it's more than 1,000 pages, and as you all know, it is the central document on the basis of which an environmental clearance is given. It's very, very important. But the shoddiness, the apathy, the lack of integrity, I'll give you 2 or 3 examples which are laughable, but they become so tragic because of the scale of what is proposed to be done. So this is by Vimta Labs, that's based in Hyderabad. Next one, please. So this is the language in the report of the Environment Impact Assessment, which says, added to the problem was biting insects, including mosquitoes. Further, when one tries to look upwards to find out what tree it is not just one but many. Then they say it was impossible, the second circle, it was impossible to use any measuring devices like tape to make any quadrant in the forest vegetation. Hence, intensive survey was carried out on both sides of Campbell Bay Indira Point for 4 days. It is about 45 kilometers and the entire stretch was surveyed 8 times. So 160 square kilometers, that is the area of that forest. The most pristine forest, unsurveyed forest. Detailed researchers even now will find new species, new distributions, new records. This is the basis on which, this is the language on which, this is the research on which some of the most precious forests of this country, of the world, are going to be signed away. The least that could have been done was questions could have been asked about this. And there are many layers of, there's plagiarism, there is wrong information, there is incomplete information. One just feels so bad that even if you did a rigorous job and said, okay, now we are good to do, it's not even a rigorous job. It's so pathetic a job. Next one. Look at, this is an environmental clearance condition by the same person I'm talking about, that committee. And look at this condition. It says, trees with nesting holes of endemic owls to be identified and geotagged with the help from SACON. Such trees shall be safeguarded as far as possible. So this is, this is illogical, right? It's internally incoherent. So what do you mean you can, as far as possible? So it's not possible, so cut it. But I also did a back of the envelope calculation. By the administration's initial statistics, 1 million trees are to be cut in this forest. Subsequent assessment by ecologists who looked at density of these trees in these kinds of forests say this might be an underestimate by a factor of 3. Some say it may be an underestimate by a factor of 10. So it might be 1 crore of trees to be cut. Now imagine applying this condition. You're looking at 100 feet trees at least in a rainforest. So when do you see an owl anyway? How often do we see an owl? Now to find the nesting hole of an endemic owl. So if you have, if you put say 10 of our best bird watchers for 6 months, a year, to just look at owls in these trees, it will take 20 years or 15 years just to be able to survey and say, okay, these forest does not have any nesting owls. So what does it mean to have a condition like this? It's meaningless, right? It cannot be implemented. It is unscientific, it's illogical. And then they're saying, okay, we're going to implement this condition. So they're implementing this condition. I don't know what they're doing. More recently, they said they called for proposals to enumerate, cut and dispose of the trees. And one of the proposals in that is to put the trees into a powerhouse, to burn it to generate power, which is not even in the original proposal. So I think they're not able to manage. It's so bizarre that they also don't know what to do. But the problem is that the environmental and forest clearances have been given. And while work has not yet begun, which is a good thing, the groundwork has been done, the paperwork has been done. And even if little starts, whatever we lose, we will lose forever. So there is the hope, but also there is this concern that nothing seems to be able to convince authorities and powers that be that there's a problem at every level. Next one. I've just 2-3 more illustrations. This is the other thing that is very, very recent. So WII, which said, they gave the permission and said we have no experience of working in the islands on turtles, now have proposed a 300 or 270 crore project to study leatherback conservation in these islands. So they are going to get about 700 crores. They have proposed 700 crores for studying environmental management and biodiversity management in Great Nicobar as compensation for the destruction of this forest. So you gave the permission, you didn't have the expertise, now you're going to get money from the project or from whoever, so to do this kind of study. So, one just feels completely locked out. I mean, what do you do in a situation like this? So isn't there a conflict of interest, leave alone anything else? How can you be the institution that granted permission and now getting money to work on that? The least is, we don't have the conflict of interest. Next one. And then of course, you've done all your papam, you've done all your sins, you've done your deforestation, so now you have to do Ganga Snanam, so you have to go and take, so you do compensatory afforestation. So 130 square kilometers of forest lost in the Nicobar will be compensated by creating 260 square kilometers of land as forest in Haryana, of which already some land after creating as forest has been given away to the mining company. So it's like a double whammy. So it's just going on and on and on in that sense. Next one. That's what this is. That notified forest has been sold for mining immediately after it was notified. So just everything seems to be problematic. Everything seems to be wrong, and yet we are not able to do anything about it. Next one. So we are just going to have a new species. It's quite possible. It's going to be called the Haryanvi megapode. And I think Indian science and Indian bureaucracy is, I think, quite capable. So this might sound bizarre, but we never know. Anything is. So if you can have the Nicobar forest be replaced by forests in the Aravallis, then well, why not? Why not have a Haryanvi megapode? So we might have a new addition to the avifauna of India. So all the best. Next one. There you are. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say. This is just really the tip of the iceberg. Like I said in the beginning, I'm just trying to deconstruct what's going on, to talk to any audience, anybody interested, to say why this is a problem. I know you won't need convincing after this. I'm quite sure of that. But one still feels the need to talk and to be able to communicate because it matters. We can see what we can do about it, but the first thing would be to know this is happening. So, like I said, Frontline has been a great support in this over the last 2-3 years. 2.5 years ago, we did this special cover which they called the Nicobar Nightmare, and then just 2 weeks ago, the last issue was this other special issue with some very interesting stories, some very detailed stories. Next one. We also did these multiple other things early on. Actually, we began, Kalpavriksha did this report that I put together for Kalpavriksha called A Monumental Folly, which was a selection of my early writings and a bunch of documents. Then Sanctuary Asia did a very nice biodiversity special, which was not in print. It's an online version, would still be available, but some very good stories on the biodiversity of Great Nicobar Island. Then of course we had the 2 Frontline issues. And then about a year ago, or less than a year ago, we did this book, which we're kind of releasing today in Kerala or in Trivandrum, called the Great Nicobar Betrayal, that I just put together. I have a couple of pieces. These are already published articles by ecologists. There's a lawyer. We brought it together because we thought it would be nice to reach out in a quick manner to people to read for it. Next one. Okay, this is something that I think we did, which was very valuable. We couldn't handle the volume of data and information that was there. We were talking of hundreds and hundreds of documents, thousands of pages of reports. So right from the project proposal, EIA, minutes of meetings, scientific documents, communication, etc., etc. So we came up with the idea of creating a very simple timeline. So this, we are at the moment in the process of doing a third version. In the next month we'll have one, but it's a simple 25-page PDF with every single date in the history of the project mapped onto the document. And I'll show you an example. And then each one of these is hyperlinked into a Google Drive where you can go and get access to that original document. So it could be the minutes of the meeting, it could be the project proposal, etc., etc., etc. So that has become a very useful resource for journalists, for researchers, for lawyers. And I'm realizing that it's actually a simple but a very valuable thing to do, because otherwise we don't have track of what is going on. And so many things are linked. We're looking for something and we don't know. So that has been probably our biggest contribution, and it's something I've been suggesting to a lot of researchers. Look at this model for any project that you're working, and you can actually interlink it and you find multiple layers of connection and information. Next one. Yeah, so this is what the timeline looks like. So you have dates, and we try to color code them so that we have thematically. So ecological issues, policy issues, environmental issues. Although it's not been very useful, but the dates are there. And when you click the date, you go into the Google Drive and you can then download the entire document. So I'm quite sure that nobody else has all these documents. Even the ministry won't have them. So this has become a very, very useful resource. It's in the public domain. The QR code was there. So you can write to me. I will send you the PDF if you want, but you can also access it from the QR. Next one. Yeah, I mean, these are some of the contents of the book, which I've already spoken about. The history of the project, the ecological concerns, the tribal issue. It's all already very old now. The book is 6 months old, but we just feel that it's like so much has happened in the last 6-8 months. But this still gives you the heart of what the issues are. It's what new information is only building upon this. So the book has been very useful because it has reached out very widely. It did much better than we thought. We had to go for a second print. It's actually too highly priced at 499 for a 100-page book. There's a very interesting comment on Amazon saying that these guys are fleecing us, kind of thing. But it's a very useful compilation to reach out. It has gone to a number of places unexpectedly. Sunil, there was a student in class 11 in Rishi Valley who did a project based on the book. I was very surprised. There was in the newsletter. My son is in Rishi Valley. In the newsletter, one day we saw that there is a note on this project. So communication reaches out. We don't know. We don't know who picks it up, who does what. So that's been very encouraging with the book, and we managed to reach out a bit. A lot more needs to be done, and I have some ideas and requests and suggestions. Next one. Next one. So we have a Bengali translation that's coming out. So it's been a little delayed, but by the end of this month, a literal translation of the Great Nicobar Betrayal. They couldn't agree on the betrayal bit, so they made it some questions about the Nicobar project. But it'll reach out to an audience, hopefully. Also important because Calcutta High Court has the jurisdiction of the islands. But I've been to Calcutta 2-3 times. Like I've come here, I had an opportunity of speaking to people. So to get the media interested, to get the media involved, to get researchers involved, all these outputs and communications, of course, as we know, will help. So we are working on a Hindi one at the moment also. It's translated, so hopefully in the next couple of months we'll have that as well. So we are trying to do to the extent possible that we can. Maybe we can think of something from here, even in terms of just journalism, if not a translation of the book, or research, or writing in the local media, if there are researchers or journalists. I think the more we reach out, the more people know about it, the better it would be for raising questions, even in the political system, in some point, in some way that is possible, but certainly in the media and among the research community. Next one, please. Yeah, this is just, I'm really finished now. This is another book I've done a few years ago. We just did a new edition last year, which actually is a history of the islands of the last 30 years. So this is a compilation of my journalism of the last 30 years. So it kind of lays the context in not a very free-flowing narrative, but it tells us what's happened in the last 25-30 years. How the islands are much more than just cellular jail or Kalapani or Jaravas or tourism. There's so much more over there. And then the Great Nicobar Betrayal is a little bit of just the last 3 months or 3 years of what is happening in those islands. Next one. This is the collection of my books that Asha mentioned. We have copies here. If you'd like to pick them up. There's a novel, and then the 2 books I mentioned, and there is a book for children. which has been translated also into Hindi and Telugu and Tamil. So, I mean, do please pick up copies if you feel like before you leave. Next one. That's it. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's my email ID. Please do feel free to reach out. And of course, thank you very much for inviting me, Asha, and for this opportunity and for so patiently listening in. Thank you.